All right, we're live.
Is it live?
Yes. Yee. Okay,
We ready?
good to go.
Great, you starting it today. So this is, I guess, the final one. Why does it have to be the final one?
This is the season finale.
The season finale?
Season
This is it.
finale.
So welcome, guys. I guess, I don't even know what we call this, the D&E show. This came out of, actually, the enormous amount of firearms we've been selling in the last couple months to new users. So we've been getting a lot of questions since we haven't been able to offer classes, which is coming very soon. So we thought we started this a couple weeks ago just based off of questions we got throughout the week, one through our email and through phone calls and stuff. And today, a lot of people have been asking us who are new to the firearms industry, how do I clean my firearm? Do I need to clean my firearm? So we thought we'd just do a quick, probably 15, 20 minutes, depending on what the questions are like out there, on how to clean the basic firearms. We always encourage questions, not just on cleaning. If you have something else you would like us to address, just certainly yell. I was actually out shopping yesterday and had a listener stop us or stop me and say, hey, look, I got a bunch of questions and I always wish you guys would address, and I don't know how to get them to you. And the best place for that is on target at lepd.com. We watch the email address, and so if there's something throughout the week you want us to address on Saturday during the broadcast show, just send us an email or call on during the show. So, all right, so today for cleaning your firearms, we talked about last week that for us, if you are relying on this firearm for your personal safety, the safety of you and your family, you want to take everything out of the mix that could impede the firearm working when you need it. And so cleaning is easy, and we encourage you to clean it every time you fire it. So if you're out at the range or at the family farm and you shoot your firearm, shortly thereafter, if this is something that's going to be used to protect your family, I would clean it. And I think you do the same, Dee. I mean, I don't like to have it. I don't like to carry it if it's dirty, just because I don't want that to be something that impedes, the progress of needing it when the time comes. So, if we look at some of the basics, you don't have to do anything fancy, and of course, each gun is a little bit different, and so we encourage you to look at the owner's manual, kind of a novel idea, but it is important because each manufacturer recommends a little bit different on how they recommend the lubrication or the breakdown, but we'll talk from a high level and show you some of the products that are just popular that you can't go wrong with. So let's start with the basics, as we often do. My favorite, the revolver. You see that there, D? Revolver is let me hold it up there. All right. The revolver is one of the simplest things to clean, and that's part of the reason we love them so much. This is your basic J-frame small Smith & Wesson revolver, and as you can see, no rounds in the chamber, obviously. You have to make sure, and this goes without saying, but we need to say it, is you need to make sure the firearms are unloaded before you go about cleaning them. A little bit easier in the revolver because you can visually see there's nothing in the chambers or in the cylinder. When you get to the semi-auto, it becomes a little bit, you need to think about it a little bit more. But simply on the revolver, the nice thing about it is even when these are a little bit dirty, they will work. So the simple thing about it is you want to be able to clean out the cylinders, the barrel, and then kind of the face there where the firing pin is. It's super easy to do, and you can go about it two different ways. One is I like using a solvent to break down the dirt in it, and then following that up with an oil of sorts. Nowadays, there's stuff called CLP, Clean, Lube, and Protect. It's all in one. Do you have that there?
See the cameras.
Yep. Is it in the...
Yes.
So either way you go, it is totally a personal preference. I like going the old-fashioned way where I have a solvent first. And so there's two ways to go about it. Let's say we're going to look at it from a solvent and then an oil standpoint. One of the most popular solvents around, been around forever, is the Hoppe's number 9. Do you have that there, Vanna? The big bottle. So if you start with, and you don't have to purchase the big bottle, if you start with the Hoppe's number 9, you simply want to get either a bore snake, which is kind of a new thing to the market that has really made it super easy to clean, or a brush with a rod. And The brush and the rod, probably the easiest things are, let's see the kit there.
Okay.
Some of these are make it super easy to get everything all in one spot. These we sell a bunch of. They're only $10. It includes the Hoppies oil, the solvent, and your rod and brush. So on something like this, you want to buy it for the caliber of firearm that you're talking about, and we'll show you each of the kits come with a brush such as this that has that's a little bit coarse in nature. Sometimes you see them in a nylon, sometimes they're brass, and you simply put it on the end of the cleaning rod and then dip this into the solvent. So for instance, the Hoppies, and I usually just hold it like this, and it doesn't matter if you get it a little bit, solvent all the way around, it's not going to hurt anything, and just simply go down each chamber. I do that 2 or 3 times, making sure you hit all of them, and then also in the bore. And I do that 2 or 3 times. After you do that, you can visually look down and see that it is noticeably cleaner. But you're not done quite yet. After you do that, you can change the tip on it here. And again, these kits are invaluable and they're inexpensive. And you want to put on a tip that has a little hole through it that allows you to put one of the patches through it. You can certainly buy patches. I think we have a big pack over there. We have really big packs of them, or the kits come with them. And if you simply take one of the patches out, put it through the eyelet, and do the exact same thing that we did before with the brush, and just go down each cylinder, and you'll notice that even though you thought it was clean, your patch will get pretty dirty. Don't hesitate to flip those out. I usually do it 2 and 3, maybe even 4 times until that patch comes out clean. So then you're clean within all of the chambers and with the barrel. So then the next thing that I like to do is you'll see that it will get dirty right back here in the face by the firing pin. That's simply you can clean by, again, dipping a brush, so either a nylon brush that we sell here very inexpensively, or a brass brush, and dipping it into the solvent and just simply going on the face there, and you'll see that it'll clean up really nice. The brushes are very nice. You just have to watch a little bit that you don't go too hard with it on some of these finishes, because you'll start to take off the finish a hair. But the nylon brushes usually do the trick. You can also use an old toothbrush, which I've done numerous times, preferably a used one. And then I always hit it a little bit too, right where the beginning of the barrel is, just because there's some black residue that gets on there from the lead. So if you hit both of those spots, clean it all up, and then from there, that's really about it on the revolvers. I then take my Hoppies oil. That's the solvent.
Oh.
Oh, that's the CLP.
Yeah, CLP up here.
We'll take it out of the container here. The Hoppies oil. And then I'll go back through, put a fresh patch on, and go down all the chambers just with a little light coat of oil. Personally, then, I also like to put a little oil on the gun, and then take these rags that are all over the place now. You can use them for your car or whatever. And then I wipe everything down, so it leaves just a hair of a coating, and that protects it in case there's moisture that gets to it. You don't want rust on your firearm. And really, that is about it for the revolver. You don't have to do much more than that. We have silicone rags that we sell that put a little bit of silicone on them. It's not necessary, but sometimes I like to keep just a little bit of silicone on them just to protect. Because if you're wearing these, especially concealed carry ones, and it's up against your body in the summertime and the heat and the sweat, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of oil and protection on there.
How much oil?
You know what? Really, and I've been guilty of putting too much on. You really should put it on and wipe the majority of it off. So, I mean, don't scrub it off, but make it so there's just a fine coating. A lot of times what I'll do at home not necessarily as much on the revolvers, but on the semi-autos, it really comes into play. If you have an air compressor in the garage, I'll blow it out and blow out the solvent before I put the oil in there, just to get it out of all the crevices and so forth. So so that's really it. I mean, on the revolver, it's super easy, part of the reason we like it, and it doesn't take much to get it looking back like it was new again. If you get to a point where on the face of the cylinder, it will get black there and it'll get hard to take off. We have some other products. It's more cosmetic in nature, but we have other products such as Flitz that you can work on that, and it'll actually get that face looking nice and clean, just like a new firearm. What do you think, Dee?
Looks clean.
Looks clean?
Looks really. You did good.
The other thing, too, as an alternative to the Hoppe's solvent and the Hoppe's oil is, like Denisa was showing in the bigger cans, the Break-Free CLP. It's a great product. It's a great product to use in the field. So it really comes into play if you have a semi-auto and you're out in the field and you're shooting a lot and you just need to spray it down real quick. It cleans, lubes, and protects, as it says on the front of the bottle.
My favorite one.
Yeah, and most people, that's probably what a lot of people go for these days. The Hoppe's number 9 has been around for over 100 years. So some of us like the smell of that old Hoppe's and stuff. The other products, as well as before we get into the semi-auto, these kits, as we mentioned, are very inexpensive. You buy it by the caliber. So if you have a 38 and a 9, it's actually the same kit. If you have a 45, it's a little bit different. We also sell these nice little compact kits. These are great because the rod is in there and it's all compact and you can put it together. The only thing this doesn't include is the patches. It looks like there is
a few patches. I think.
There's a few. Okay, so actually there is a few patches on this. This also gives you a few bits for the driver that if you need to take a grip off, you really don't have to take the grip off in the course of cleaning it normally. But if you choose to do so, sometimes I'll take back the screw out, take the grips off, just to make sure there's no oil and stuff that's gotten down in there. Not necessary, but occasionally I'll do that just to get a nice clean clean look on all the metal. All right. So semi-auto is very popular these days. A little bit more difficult, not difficult, a little bit more to it in cleaning, but certainly easy. And the manufacturers these days have made it very easy to break them down and to put them back together. And you certainly don't have to go down to the every little bit like we do like in an armor school. But we can show you the basics for breaking it down. Do you want to break this one down?
No. Oh, you.
Huh?
The camera focus right on you. Right.
You got the camera? Okay. So as we said before, it is imperative to make sure the firearm's unloaded. Not only that there's no round in the magazine, that the magazine's out, and as we talked last week, just because the magazine is out does not mean this firearm will not fire if there's a round in the chamber. So we always like to take the magazine, take that out of the mix, make sure that's unloaded, and then if this slide is forward, I like to rack it 2 and 3 times just to make sure if there's a round in that chamber, it's going to be ejected, and then visually look down in there to make sure there's no rounds in it. Each firearm comes apart a little bit differently, but they're all similar in nature. The Smith & Wessons actually are super easy. They come apart in 2 pieces. Almost all of them that I can think of that are modern firearms come apart in a similar fashion. So we'll put this aside for a second. The slide with the recoil spring in the barrel is right there. As soon as you take it apart, it all stays in there nice. It's not going to fly all over the place for the most part. Just with a little pressure, the spring will come out. Most of them are captured like this, so you don't have to worry about using 2 hands to get the spring back on the guide rod and stuff, so that's nice. I always pay attention to the orientation of it, so in this case, the blue I know goes towards the front there, but you can also tell by looking through the front and seeing what the natural fit is there. So we'll take that, set that aside. The next thing is the barrel, and of course I had to pick one, the threaded barrel, so it has a little bit of
extra to it.
A little bit extra. So the barrel just simply pops up and out. And you're not gonna, remember these firearms, they're made to withstand some some knocking around, you're not going to hurt the gun by normally, just pulling this out and banging it around a little bit. So now you're left with all of these pieces. You do not have to break it down any further. If you need a deep cleaning of this, that's a great thing to bring to the gunsmith. And some of the guys here, they're all armors and they can do that. But if you start with the slide, one of the things I like to do is at this point, I'll get either the Hoppies or the CLP and I'll spray or put it on over top of all this here, get my nylon brush again. And one of the first things I like to do is really clean the face of where the firing pin is there. So I'll clean that out. Does that show good there, Dee?
Mm-hmm.
I'll also get down in there and clean the rail. I'm going to have to stay in the same spot, eh? Mm-hmm. Get down there and clean the rail that slides on the frame. And really anything visible that you can see. For the most part, it's you'll see a black in there, a film in there, some carbon, but it's not. For the most part, it's not going to be something that is just absolutely filthy, unless you haven't cleaned your gun for a while. So if I clean all of that, this is where I like to, if you have an air compressor at home, to kind of blow out the solvent, just because it gets in some of those nooks and crannies, and I don't want to keep that in there going forward. So I'll blow out some of the solvent, and then I can set this part aside. Next thing is the barrel. Barrel's super easy. It is just kind of like we did with the revolver. You can buy the appropriate kit. In this case, the kit that we have here is good for a 38 and a 9. So start with the bore brush again. And simply go down there after it's dipped in solvent and go 2 and 3 times through that, and that will get some of the caked in lead that's in there and the lands and grooves. And once that's done and you can visually look up and see that it's pretty clean to this point, then that's where you can come back with your rag, or your patches rather, and 2 and 3 times. And the first couple of times you do it, you'll get black on it. It'll be picking up all that loose debris that you broke up with the brush. And then I get to a point where I'll dip the patch in some of the solvent, go 2 and 3 more times, and you'll come out and it'll be darn near clean. So then you know you have it. The other thing I like to do, the feed ramp here is important to keep clean. And if you noticed, on most new guns, it's going to be a nice shiny feed ramp. And, this is what's going to ensure that round gets into the chamber. So this is where the brass brush comes into play. I like to make sure that is really nice and polished up. So you can put a little muscle behind that, dip it into the solvent, and really clean that up. And it'll come clean pretty quick, but it can be a point of the firearm not functioning when you need it, if that feed ramp is dirty and so forth. So once you get all that, sometimes I'll blow that out too, even though the patches take care of most of it, but I'll blow it out just to make sure there's no solvent in any of the nooks and crannies in that, and we can set that aside. Next thing, the frame of the gun. This gets a little more trickier. There's a lot going on here, and you certainly don't want to dip this in solvent. You don't want this dripping with solvent. I personally put a little bit in a couple areas. I take my nylon brush and I go over the rails, go over some of the metal parts that are seen through there, and generally just any of the visible dirt that you can see, I'll try to get that out. Since there is so many nooks and crannies, the other end of the brush really comes into play here, where you can get down in between things. You want to be a little bit careful here that you're not bending any of these metal parts, because this does affect the functionality of the gun. We also sell, we actually sell a great product that we didn't bring to the table. They look like an overgrown Q-tip. We have them in different sizes, and they are great for getting in there. They are better than a Q-tip because they will not, the material on it will not flake off and leave behind residue or nylon in the firearm. So it's great. It's meant for gun cleaning, and they're fairly inexpensive. So after you go and clean all that out, this is a perfect time to get that air hose, if you have it, and blow out all the solvent that is seeped down in there. And you'll get to a point where it's pretty dry. So this is now the next step is something that you are going to have to look at the specific manufacturers. Some guns like to run drier than others. Some like a little more oil. And where that comes into play is on the actual rails is where you can actually put, now that the gun is clean, a drop of oil. You want to make sure, even in the firearms that require oil, just put a little bit. So a lot of times what I'll do, we have little tiny bottles of oil, and I'll put it at the very tip of the rail and then just kind of let it run on its own down the rail. It's that little of amount. You certainly don't want to put too much oil. We get firearms in all the time in the gunsmith area where people have put too much oil in and it started to impede the functionality of the gun. It gets gummed up or starts to attract dirt. So just a little bit there, just enough to help with the slide going back and forth on the receiver. I usually put them there. There's a couple points that I like to put them on the back as well. And again, the owner's manual can kind of tell you some of those touch points in putting those there. Other than that, I don't put a whole lot of oil on the frame of the gun. Occasionally we have some spray oil. Rim oil is a good product to use. Hoppies has one too, but you know, I might put a light spray across all of this and wipe it down. Again, nothing so it's dripping off if you shake the gun. Any questions, Dee?
Nope, no questions.
Oh, it's probably a good time too here. We talked about the bore snake on the bore. They are a great product. Really, even more so when it comes to cleaning long guns, but even revolvers. They are super easy, and the nice thing about it is it kind of combines the bore brush with the patches, and it's all in one. So the bore snake itself has a weighted end for you to drop through the barrel, and then the first part of it has, in essence, a bore brush on it. It's brass bristles that are there to kind of clean it, and then immediately following is kind of the rag part of it. So they're super easy. You simply drop it through, and I usually put a little bit of solvent on the inside, but you just drop it through and just pull it, and in one swoop, if you do that 2 or 3 times, it's a good alternative to using the brush and the bore, and a great thing for the field too. So if you're out in the field, it's so easy to put these in your range bag and do a quick cleaning when you're out in the field.
Do you have to clean out the magazine?
Well, that's a good question. Do you clean out your magazines?
Rarely.
No, because they're kind of a pain.
Yeah.
So magazines is a good question. Do I need to clean out the magazine? For the most part, they don't get too dirty. But it's not a bad idea to inspect them from time to time. Certainly, most manufacturers suggest you don't oil them. I for a long time thought it was a good idea to oil the springs, but most of them suggest you don't. They all come apart fairly easy. Most of them have some type of button to depress at the bottom. And then the base simply slides away. Now this is under pressure, obviously, from the spring. So if you just hold your thumb there, then you can see the spring and the follower all become evident. Now, because we deal with so many firearms here, and because I'm not smart enough to remember them all, I always make sure that when I take this out, I know the orientation of that follower and the spring going in. Some of the magazines are specific on how that magazine sits in there. So you don't want to turn it upside down. You don't want to flip it side to side. It has a specific way that goes in, and it can affect the functionality of that round being chambered into the next round coming up. So I always watch very closely on that. So if you take this all apart, we have a brush that can go in there and clean that. A lot of times I'll just take a rag that has a little oil on it, and just sift it through, pull it through the whole way to clean out the inside of it, and just wipe down the spring. But for the most part, it doesn't get too bad. And I'll have to be honest, I don't clean my magazines out every time I clean the gun. So probably once every year, every couple years, I'll take the magazine apart just to visually look at it. They go back together real easy, but again, it's under a tension, so you kind of have to have a few hands there. And you end up springing the spring at least one time across the room. Mm-hmm. And then it snaps in. You make sure when it snaps in that you hear the snap, and then I also check just to make sure it's locked in there. And that's really it. That's that is it for being able to clean it. So a reassembly of the gun, it is super easy. Just opposite of how we took it apart. So the barrel goes in. This one happens to have a threaded barrel, so we'll put the thread protector on it. The spring that we said before, we knew that in this case the blue part goes towards the front, and it's very slight pressure keeps it in place. So you know, there is certainly exceptions to this, but for the most part, any of the modern firearms go together very, very easily. And then just line it up. And in this case, make sure you don't force anything. I mean, it goes very smooth. If you're getting any resistance, I always like just to kind of jiggle it a little bit, because the last thing you want to do is force it on and then it not be on correctly. Then you're back together. I always rack it a few times, make sure it sounds or visually looks like it is supposed to. Lock it back, check everything out. It looks good. So that's really it for cleaning the handguns. There's really not much to it other than just making sure that you do indeed do it periodically to keep it nice looking. I always like to do, again, this is just me, I have that rim oil, a light coat of oil. I like to spray the gun with that and then wipe it all down. It's not to a point where it's greasy and it's hard to handle, but just to have a coating on there, just in case the firearm's out in the weather, or maybe it's being stored in a location that's a little bit damp. At least there's a little bit of oil in there to protect it from the rust. If you do notice that your gun does have a little rust on it, a lot of times if we catch it early on, is something that we can handle here at the store in the gunsmith, and we have some products that can take the rust off before it starts pitting the metal, which is the key. Any questions out there, Dee?
Speaking of magazines, this guy has heard two sides of the story. Is it okay to keep the magazine fully loaded?
Good question. And you know what? This is something we've talked about for years. There's a little bit of a debate on it. I'll tell you what I know, and then like anything, you kind of have to draw your own conclusion. So in one spectrum, you look at law enforcement, and a lot of times our magazines are loaded in our pouches for a couple years, easy. And when we go to the range and you're using your magazines to qualify, they work. So in some regards, you think that, okay, they can last a long time fully loaded. We've had firearms come in here from estate sales, and they come in loaded. And we had specifically, I remember Colt 1911 that had probably been loaded since the 40s. And that spring had just as much tension on it, and it was ready to go. There's another train of thought that says to short it by 1 round. So if you have a magazine and it's a 16-round mag, only put 15 on it so the spring's not compressed. The other thing, probably the best thing to do, is to have an extra magazine and rotate it through. So I do that with some of my carry guns. I'll have 3 magazines. One, I'll give it a break, not have any rounds in it. Every month, every couple months, I'll put that one in service, take another one out, and give that one a break. If you find that you're having feeding issues, there is some things that we can do to the existing spring, and there's also spring kits out there. So if it's really an issue that we can't handle, a lot of times you can purchase a spring kit for pretty inexpensively and put that through it. But probably the best scenario is to have that extra mag and rotate it in and out. That's probably the safest, because I always felt like if I didn't want to short the rounds, if my magazine held 16, I wanted the full advantage of having 16 in there. But sometimes you get lazy and forget to rotate the mags. But that's probably the best scenario.
That's all the questions.
That's it.
Everyone's still sleeping today.
Yeah, me too. So guys, to give an update on what we're doing around here tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
The Cinco de Mayo Corona Special. The range is opening back up. So for the first time in probably 6 weeks, the range will be open. It is nicely painted. The baffles are painted. And so it'll be up and ready to go in the morning. We're going to limit shooters to every other lane to maintain the distances we need. When you come to the range door, We're only going to let in enough people to be on the range or to be with an associate down here on the sales floor. If you're waiting either for the range or in the sales floor, we're going to have you wait in your car. We're going to text you, right, or come out and get you when it's your turn and bring you through. We're just trying to limit the number of people down in the showroom. So basically, it's going to be a one-on-one interaction with a salesperson. So when you come here, we'll help you find exactly what you need, whether it be a firearm or accessories or ammo, and you'll be one-on-one with that salesperson. All entry and exit from the store is going to be through the range door. So you'll see a sign on the front door having you go through there. That's just because that's kind of our entry point. We're going to have a table set up, and it should be a pretty smooth scenario. We have plenty of ammo still. Matter of fact, we just saw that another, I think, 30,000 rounds of 9 is coming tomorrow. So we have plenty of ammo. We are limiting it just because we don't know what's in the pipeline. Ammo prices have gone up. It just, with that order today, we saw it went up. 9mm, for instance, went up a couple dollars a box from what we purchased for before the COVID stuff. So there's going to be a little bit of price increase, nothing crazy yet. Firearms, I think, have started to trickle in a little bit higher in price. D, are you seeing, or what do you?
There's a few things. I know we are still almost completely out of stock with a lot of Glocks. So I know a lot of people have been asking about Glock 19s. Definitely out of stock out of those. I know there's some coming, but we don't know the time of arrival on a lot of things.
And when they come in, they're coming in only 1 or 2 at a time. Glock also made that announcement that we talked about on the show last week, where they are going to, it's beginning July 1st, they are no longer going to produce Gen 4 on a lot of models. So there's a few models that are out there that don't have a Gen 5 version that they're going to continue the Gen 4, but for the most part, Gen 4 Glocks are going to go away. So what I would assume is that we're rarely going to see one from here on out, because if they're stopping production in July, that means just whatever's in the pipeline is going to come through, and that would be it. Gen 3s as well. So the Glock case, whenever we get up and running again, by the time we take those out of the mix, and Glock also said earlier in the year they're no longer going to produce firearms with night sights on them. So it will be something that is done aftermarket, which we've done here anyways. But by the time you take the Glock night sights out of the mix, and the Ameriglow sights and the Gen 4s and the Gen 3s, the Glock cases are a lot smaller, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it lends itself to less choices and a little bit more focus on when you're looking at a Glock.
Absolutely.
What else? The other products are pretty much in stock. The shotguns are trickling in, still 1 or 2 at a time. The entry level ARs are trickling in. We'll get in 3 and sell 3, but those are trickling in as well. And so we're looking forward to seeing everyone back at the store. We are certainly ready to have everyone back here, and still closed on.
Yeah, classes and training. We're still postponing all the classes. We're not doing anything with concealed carry, handgun 101, private lessons, any of those classes. Leosa and Opata, I believe we still are.
Yep, Leosa, the retired officer training is on, and if you send the email through the website, we can get you scheduled for that. Opata training is on as well. We've already done one of those classes, and our training will be hopefully be here shortly. We might start opening back up with just a very, very small class size, but we really are anxious to get back into that. And so watch the website. Probably the best place. It's right on the front page of our website that says COVID update. The other thing too that's out there that's really kind of neat, I don't know, I think we should keep this going, D, is a current list of our inventory. So it's a little bit labor intensive to have it out there all the time, but it really allows people to see what we have in stock right now.
Definitely.
and it's pretty up to date. I mean, probably every other day we update it.
Yeah, I think we're going to update it today. I just put out all the updates, now we just have to upload it all.
Right, and it also is a great place to see the used firearms. So that we've always had that out there, but we've actually opened that up a little bit in these last couple weeks. So other than that, we are ready to go and anxious to see everyone back here at the store. If you have questions, certainly stop by, give us a call, send us an email. Through the website, there's a way to ask questions. On Target at lepd.com is a great way, because that goes right to me. I can see that and get questions answered during the show or before the show, and we appreciate your time. So
this is fun.
Yeah, I know. So all right, so you know what this means, D? You're gonna have to come on Saturdays.
Ooh,
Huh?
I don't know about that.
There's a spot right there. Right there. That headset's open on Saturday.
No, I think this is where Phil sits. And,
Yep, he's right over there. So right here, we can make a room for you. So all right, guys, thanks. Be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you here at the store.
think I got it.
Then hit yes for save.
I think it's still recording.
Yep, we gotta take a second.
Oh,